The idea is that if you have, I think you can use a pointer then, can you see this? If you have a blue color up here to, well, this is a blue color, there's basically no problem with congestion. This is the morning traffic. If there is orange, there's some problem. Red is considerably, and black is heavy congestion. The idea is that we have different data sources than the Googles have, so we can do a bit more in the inner cities. And the problem in the inner cities is that congestion is quite different from the main road network because, well, traffic is a lot more dense and you have the signalized intersections. So that's why we're not trying to compete with Google. That would probably be plain stupid. But the idea that there are different ways to compute computation, and you have to be careful not to use the same principles on the main road network as you do in the inner cities. And we actually can sell this data, so we have a small business case there. That's one of the things we are doing. This is point data, meaning that if you're willing to supply a latitude, a longitude, a heading, and a speed, we're in business. You just have to provide us with one measurement. We're up and running, and we are glad that we'll get data from you. And that's one type of data that we like a lot. And you can get that from many different sources. That's kind of a lowest common denominator for doing anything with traffic. Another issue that we are working on is what is called isochrones. Like the isobars, isochrones are how far can you get in 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. And what you see here now, I hope you can see to your left, is a map of where you are in Aalborg. We have the fjord in between, the water, the blue stuff. And the idea is that, I don't know if I can move away from the microphone. The idea is that I put a C here for center, and then I would like to, this is where our current main hospital is. And let's assume that you get a stroke, and can you make it to the hospital in 10 minutes to actually get some kind of a treatment? And the green here means that, that you actually always will make it in 10 minutes. The data source here is kind of very different because here we actually use the trajectories. Here we use high-frequent GPS data to track when you stop, when you make turns, when you stop in intersection and stuff like that. So that's a bit more, it's usually a bit more accurate than the point that we use for the congestion maps. And the idea is here, green, you always make it, yellow, you make it in 50% of the cases, and red is that you only make it in 10% of the cases. And if you look down here to the furthest in the corner, there's a single one that is purple, and that means forget it, you won't make it to the hospital in 10 minutes. The idea is now that we are investing a billion euros or whatever, a lot of money, and we're actually moving it to this location here, the other C, and then it naturally changes a lot. How far can you get in 10 minutes? And personally, I'm very happy because I now live in the green area where I previously were living in those you could not reach. But the idea, this is a total different type of data because you need to have the high frequency so that you can make the accurate trajectories. And this data is pretty hard to come by in huge sets. So we can basically only make this in some parts of Denmark. The congestion map covers all of Denmark where we have data. So that's what we are doing. And if we look at our approach, it's kind of very generic. So we have been speaking to a lot of different projects also up here, a lot of fleet owners, municipalities, private person. So these guys, they give us data, they give us GPS data, and I also written CAN, that's control area network, that is, for example, the fuel consumption, so that we can make eco-driving and eco-routing stuff. Then we put this data, we put that into a green box here, some ITS software, ITS for Intelligent Transport Systems naturally, and we do some kind of magic, and that magic is our output, and you've seen two types. You've seen the congestion map and the isochrone. This is kind of the stuff that we actually deliver to our, quote, customers. So if you look at it, we have some input in the form of GPS and canvas data. We do the green part is some processing, and then we do some output, which is the actual product that we can sell. So what have our challenges been? Well, there's been a lot of challenges, and you may know of those also in the MOBiNET project. That is, data is not available. You have a lot of these FOD projects in the EU funded by FP7. So, well, we will collect a lot of data, both GPS and canvas, paid by the EU, and then you ask for that data. They even write in the description of work, this is publicly available, and then you ask them, and then you get no. Governments have a lot of data, but they're not always aware that they have the data. They don't know where it is. They don't know how to extract it and stuff like that. So there are kind of a number of issues to get access to the data. Then when you get the data, well, it comes in many formats. You know, nobody really thought of that we should use this for anything than our main purpose. Another issue is that data is not cleansed, meaning that for us, we could have cars going 300 kilometers an hour. Well, we are not Germans going on the Autobahn, so that's probably something that is dirty. We have cars that are apparently driving in the middle of the ocean. We have cars where you jump 20 kilometers within 10 seconds. So you need, if you don't clean, I have had colleagues who have not cleansed the data, and then you get funny results. And then another issue is if you get data, you can be most certain that it's not documented. And we have this old joke in the computer science area, so documentation is a city in East Russia, and you do not want to be deported there. So you go and look at the data. So I'll quote our solution to that. Well, we have used lowest common denominator. That's normally CSV files. You actually get a dump. It's a text file. Then you can load into Excel if you are such an Excel freak. Sometimes we also have used brute force, and that is adding man hours. I actually don't like that because I have a man-hour budget that I have to take care of. And then reverse engineering. If everything else fails, you go to reverse engineering. That's particularly been done in the canvas area, I can say. And then we also go into the screen scraping business, you know, beg, borrow, steal metaphor. If you put it on the internet, we will find it and we will use it. That's why we have students. They're cheap labor. But the law of these getting access to data is you're certain that if you have n suppliers of data, you have at least n plus one data format you have to take care of, because there's always one company that says, oh, we have this format, but then they forgot it, and then they hired another guy to do format number 2. So you'll have a lot of work to actually get the data into whatever it is you're doing. So this is our current situation, and where would I like MOBiNET to help? Well, if I look at our effort here, this is 100% of our hours we put in. I would guess if we put into the 3 boxes, the input, the processing, and the output, I would very much hope that MOBiNET could help me in these, whatever, 60, 70%. So that means that I don't think that MOBiNET can reduce the time to market by 1/10, but I most certainly think that you could, you know, if you had a nice standard data that I could just, it's well documented, it's cleansed, my time to market, if as a university, would be significantly decreased. So that's where I would like you to help. And as looking at the MOBiNET homepage, I saw that you would like to contribute to standard bodies, and that's well, EU apparently like to hear that. I've heard that before in FP7 projects, and you can also from the call text see that you should contribute to standards. The problem is standards are nice. Well, the standard joke again, God loves standards, so he created a tremendous number of these standards. Just in my area, we have ISO, the international, ANSI, the Americans. They kind of fight sometimes, ISO, ANSI, because Americans are big. You have to listen to us, or we will sue your asses off. You have the Germans, you have V3C, which are kind of OASIS, ODC for spatial, ITU for telecommunication, and OMA for various other stuff. So I think that is most certainly something you should pursue, doing standards. But why have I not done the standard route? I have, well, it's basically too slow. So it's very, very slow if you go the standard way. So you wait 5, 10, 15 years to actually get a standard accepted. So you can't do that. So what has our approach been? That's been, you know, the NICA approach. Just do it, because that's fast. And I think these two approaches can work in parallel. You know, there's nothing that prevents you from going in the standard direction, and well, half of you going in the standard direction, and the other half just going it, because you need to show up early that you actually have a success. And then I can only recommend that, well, there's some kind of feedback loop, because we screwed up a number of times, I can tell you, and we have a lot of experience in what you should not do. We also have experience in what you actually should do. So that ends up with my, hopefully my main thing is that you should look at what you have a mobile target, and we also had that back in the beginning of the 90s, where the Internet Engineering Task Force, those guys who make the requests for comment, these IFCs for the Internet. There was a guy who had a huge influence, David Clark from MIT. He said, well, we reject kings, presidents, and voting. He's not against the democracy, it's voting in committees, standardization committees. We believe in rough consensus and running code. And that's kind of the approach that we have taken. Show us it, and we'll get some experience from that. We have a rough consensus about what it is we have. For example, we need a lat long, we need a bearing, we need speed. Okay, we are up and running. And then we can actually produce something that our customers can, well, again, we don't have to say air quote customers again because we're a university. But I think you should be inspired by that. They had a fairly success with this thing called the internet. So go where there actually was successes. So this means that my main conclusion is it's ambiguous. I cannot wait for MOBiNET to finish because you will really make my life easier. That's the easy the positive interpretation. The other interpretation, I can't wait for you to finish because I need to deliver something also this month. So thanks for the attention. I should say, are there any questions? Oh. Well, I'm a bit short-sighted, so what does it say? Can you see it? We just switched to Danish. It's encoded now. No, we can't see it. So the backbore steel, we try to be a bit careful. We don't steal anything. If you put it on the internet and, well, I'm not a lawyer. If it, for example, the OpenStreetMap has data you can use for some purposes on the Creative Commons. There are also some of the big commercial sites that actually they're pretty dependent on that their data is online. And they say you're allowed to use it. Since I don't have commercial interests, I don't sell stuff, it may be different from a company. But let me take an example, the weather data, for example. What we integrate with electric vehicles and weather data, so we can show that the head and tailwind actually matters for these vehicles. In Denmark, you can't get, well, the weather data in Denmark is officially for free. However, if you ask for it, you have to pay 100,000 Danish kroner. That's like 12,000 euros. So that's a different interpretation of free. So what you do instead of is that you go to the Americans where you have NOAA, where the Danish Meteorological Institute is obligated to ship data. So we go and get it for free from the Americans. But then you say, well, you have to. We try to be polite, and if you get the data once, we store it locally and never ask again, because you get data in very big granularities. So we try to be nice. We try to do good in what we're doing.
Thanks very much. My name is Paul Comfner from ERTICO, ITS Europe. We are the coordinator, and I have the pleasure to be the coordinator of the project. I'm always delighted to come somewhere new, and I hope to meet some people who are not in the consortium. I know most of the people in the room are probably from the consortium, and we have a consortium workshop here. But I just want to say a few words about what MOBiNET is trying to do in my own vision, and I hope it's also the vision of the project. But one thing that's important is that I think it's the intention that MOBiNET will be a marketplace that serves a very wide range of different interests. And we already see that within the project with the different use cases that we are developing and exploring. So our catchphrase is Internet of Mobility. Okay, it's a really nice phrase, I think, if you think about it, and it takes us quite far if you want to play with it a bit. What does that mean? Well, why do we need an Internet of Mobility, and what is it that we are creating in MOBiNET that helps us towards that vision? first thing to say is that it is a marketplace. It is an internet of mobility that serves both end users, being travelers or anyone that uses a transport service. It could be goods transport. And it also serves businesses. And that's quite a rare thing because one of the things we've had to do is look for suitable models outside for the organization and for the business model, because MOBiNET is, in fact, a fairly new, and it turns out reasonably unique model. And we couldn't really find an exact model that we could copy. There have been some interesting marketplaces in the transport and mobility area, but they've been really quite specific to a certain market sector, and they've been completely controlled by one type of actor, for example, car manufacturers. So the internet itself is extremely open, and end users use it, and businesses use it. And MOBiNET, in fact, needs to do the same. For end users, and anyone who's now trying to use online services, of which there are a rapidly growing number of services and data, which can be considered as a service as well. When you travel now, if you are connected in some way through your smartphone, or if you are at stops where you can see real-time information, there's a lot of this stuff around now. But it is very fragmented. It is very difficult as a user to find data and to find services when you are traveling. So this is the end user point of view. If you travel across different domains, different systems, you generally need to pay separately, and the app that is appropriate to one service doesn't work on another one. And certainly if you go from one city to another, as a traveler, you don't normally immediately find yourself in possession of all of the data and services that are actually provided in that local area. You can turn up in Aalborg, and if you don't know in advance what the local online services are, you're going to find it difficult to access them. And I think that's the state of the world at the moment. From the service providers or content providers point of view, and I notice there's a lot of, today's workshop is about data availability and openness of data. And I think from the provider's point of view, they also are in a pretty difficult situation to try to make business. If they provide a particular service, they find it rather difficult to package that with other services to offer their customers. So if you are TomTom, for example, providing traffic information and pretty good online traffic information in real time, if they want to add real-time parking information to that, which they do, it's extremely difficult for them. It involves separately negotiating with virtually every provider of parking information. So to provide a pan-European product in this travel assistance business, but as a business provider, it's extremely difficult. It's also very difficult for them to locate customers. They can't see somewhere where potential customers are online who are not already customers. If you don't have a TomTom device, it's pretty hard to be a TomTom customer. And that's just one example. There's no channel available to users' devices, for example. Devices tend to be proprietary, and the service provider is in a fairly narrowly defined silo of service and often equipment that is dedicated to that particular service. So that's the challenges from the user point of view and from a service provider's point of view. We're going to hear more later in the workshop from real providers and real data owners. So what is MOBiNET bringing to that? The intention is that by the end of the project, and I hope we do have something available that is useful to our users before the end of the project. I know you can't wait, so we're trying not to wait, but it's taking a bit of time to do this because I think it's a really big challenge. A key element to this is a directory, a kind of universal directory for Europe, this is the idea, that would have within it all of the data feeds that you might need either in a fairly raw data way, or in order to make a service for users. And if you are a business, as I mentioned, TomTom wanting perhaps to get some data on parking from a parking service provider, MOBiNET is providing a catalog of services, B2B services, that a service provider can use, can combine with their own service offering in a really quite open way. So we have a directory, catalog, whatever we call it. It's about data as not data, I would say. The pay-as-you-drive insurance service is not a data service. It's not an online data service such as traffic information, for example. So we also provide tools for orchestrating. There is, within MOBiNET, there's a business-to-consumer kind of space where there's a link to, there's an intelligent link to the different real-time data services that are available. So we don't have our own app store, but we provide a virtual app store, if you like, with a single place where you can find whatever is appropriate to your particular needs at that time. So it needs to have a lot of intelligence in it. Another important thing for the end user is that when you travel, as I say, from one city to another, and anyone who's visiting in Aalborg today, as I say, probably is not aware of the local services. And even if they did, maybe their home currency is not the Danish krone. So we provide support for service roaming. And this is really something that is very important for the end user. If we want end users, if businesses want to provide a better service to their end user customers, they have got to provide some roaming support. That means when you travel somewhere, you can pay for your services to one account with one payment with a single kind of virtual ticket. And you also want to be recognized, your identity, that when you travel, if you have an account with somebody at home for which you can pay, when you turn up in a new city, you'd like to be recognized and get the local services as if you were an honorary member of the local community, if you like. So that is that is another support to service providers in order to enable them to provide a much smoother, seamless service, interoperable service to their end customers. So that's a kind of very quick overview of the platform and some of its features. And the last thing I want to say is that important to this is also something we call the service provider community. This is also a kind of new notion that the providers that are, let's say, providing different elements of a complicated journey for a user, that they, in order to, then there needs to be some kind of an organization of trust between them. If we are going to have mutual recognition of other service providers' customers, or to be able to provide roaming across different services, we actually need some agreement amongst the providers. And this is being defined and will be, let's say, established before the end of the project. But it's important also to meet some potential providers here, perhaps, and learn from them what their views are, what their interests would be to be part of that community. What would attract them to be a member of that community, and what would need to be ensured by the community to help them, to give them the trust that they needed to participate. And this is also part of the community, is a big part of how to launch this platform. We are really determined as a consortium not to be just another research project that produced some reports at the end and then disappeared off the face of the earth. I wouldn't mind if the concept was then taken up in real life by the biggest businesses in the business, because this is the intention of MOBiNET, is to be the Europe-wide service platform. This is what the call for proposals asked for, and this is what we are trying to deliver. So the provider community is the key to that. We need, in every community, in every town, every city, every country, to be including the mobility service providers within that, at least within the directory. So we need to work out how to make this work, and that is one of our biggest challenges. But we have the team here that are working on the solution to that. And I hope we have some users and potential providers in the room that are not in the consortium and find this interesting, because that's also why we're here. So I want to stop there. Are there any questions coming through? Julie? No. Okay. Then in the kind of do-it-yourself spirit of today, we're not going to have someone that stands up here and is your master of ceremonies. So we hope that the people will introduce themselves and manage the questions themselves. You don't mind, do you? And you don't need any introduction anyway.
No, that's fine. Okay. Hello, everybody. To you in the webinar, everyone who can hear me, please raise your right hand in the air. A little higher, please. Okay, that's almost half of the audience. That's okay. So my name is Jens Mogensen. I'm from the regional development in the North Denmark region, and I want to talk a little about public authorities' view of the importance of open data. But before doing that, I will take the opportunity to welcome all of you here to Denmark and to Aalborg, and to this very special building. It's the old power plant, as most of you probably have seen, where we used to make electricity from coal. So let's go on to my presentation. Why is MOBiNET interesting for a public authority? I will point to three major challenges. One is the energy security situation, the end of fossil fuel. The next one is the environmental issues, the greenhouse effect, and the climate change that we are seeing these years. And the third one is at the same time the increasing need for mobility. Probably I don't have to speak very much about the energy security and the environmental issues. We all know that the time of fossil fuel is running out. We have only supply for a short period left. Then there will be a serious shortage in this generation or for our children. So we have to find alternatives. The same is for the environmental issues. Most of the environmental effects from the traffic can be counteracted with Euro 6 standards and more clean engine technology. But as long as we are using fossil fuels, we can't eliminate the CO2 emissions. And the CO2 emission is causing these greenhouse effects, which are changing our climate. I just learned last week that 2014 probably will be the most warm year ever registered in Denmark. And of course, this might be very nice for Denmark, but it could have fatal consequences on world level. Probably we are facing situations with food shortage and where people will be forced to travel from one part of the world to another part of the world, and that's really not good. And as a public authority, we have to do whatever is possible for us to counteract these two tendencies. So energy consumption has to be reduced, and alternatives have to be developed. Alternatives that do not have these CO2 effects. And of course there is alternatives, but the other very important part is the change of behavior, where we can change the energy consumption, the level of energy consumption. So this was two major challenges. And the third one is that at the same time, our new society is based on mobility. Mobility is really a key function in the modern society. We are living in a very divided cities, at least in the western part of the world. We have shopping areas placed somewhere. We have industrial areas, working areas, cultural and recreational areas. They are all located away from each other, so it requires a lot of mobility. At the same time, we are facing demographic changes. More and more people are living in the cities and fewer in the countryside. So the cities are being very large, and people living in the large cities are traveling a lot across the cities, as I just explained. Whereas in the old days, when the city was living in small towns, in the rural areas, they had everything within walking distance. You could walk to your school, you could walk to the shop, and you could walk to the sports place where you played football in the evening. But nowadays, there's a lot more need for mobility. Another consequence of these demographic changes is that citizens commute longer and longer to work. So we are changing from this all rural society to the networking society, both in our work situation and in the leisure situation. Even when you are on holiday, you want to go to holiday far away from where you live, and probably your children is living in another part of the country, and you have to go there whenever you want to visit them. So more and more mobility. All this mobility is causing congestion in the cities, mostly in the morning peak hour and the afternoon peak hour, but sometimes the whole day in large cities. So congestion is another negative effect besides the energy consumption and the milieu effects. And congestion leads to wasted time, among other things. It also leads to more pollution. And wasted time is a sparse resource in the modern society. So these are the three challenges. The traditional solution for these issues, at least to the congestion and mobility issue, is to build more infrastructure. But building more infrastructure requires heavy investment from the public authorities, investments that is not always possible to do, and it also requires space. And in the modern cities, there is this fight for city space. Space used for new high roads could be used for parks or recreational areas, or even for building shops, so you don't have to do such a lot of mobility. So there's a fight for city space. And as the last point, more infrastructure leads to more energy consumption and to more CO2 emissions. So instead, we have to turn to more modern solutions, change of mobility behavior. This is really the key issue in my presentation, the need for change of mobility behavior. So how do you change mobility behavior? Well, you can do it by using ITS systems. You can make people change their travel times, the time of day when they travel, and the travel routes. This can reduce the congestion level in peak hours. You can use digital mobility, that is not traveling physically, but staying at home and doing webinars as we are doing today. Or you can work on distance, remote over the internet, and you can have teleconferences and so on. So the smart mobility, as everyone is talking about now, is a question of reducing the need for physical mobility by choosing the right combination of physical modes. That is, not using your car for every kind of transport, but using the car when that is the best alternative, or using public transport and walking and bikes in other situations, and best of all, use all these modes in a combination. But to do that, you have the need for information. So information is the next key word here. if you want to change your mobility behavior, you have to give the travelers a lot of information, and you have to offer them informed choices between the different modes of transportation. And to be able to give the travelers these choices, you have to make systems based on reliable mobility and traffic data, and these informations have to be accessible on all relevant platforms as the internet, smartphones, app, navigation units, and whatever people are using now. These data, some of the most relevant data, the traffic data, is located as the public authorities. So, as public authorities, when we are facing the three challenges, we have an interest in spreading these data and making people utilize these data. And in the past, some of the most successful traffic information services has been developed and offered by public authorities. As an example, the Danish Travel Planner is the most used public internet site in Denmark. And more than 80% of the request for the travel planner is coming from mobile devices of different kinds. So there have been a lot of successes for public authorities making these information systems that should be used to make it possible for travelers to change their behavior. But it is an increasing problem for the public authorities to follow the speed of innovation in these new medias. Everything is going so fast on these new medias. I remember 10 or 15 years ago when a public authority thought there was a need for a travel information gadget of some kind. We could take the time to find out what the need was, to design the systems, to get public funding for developing the system, and when we released it, everyone was very glad and said, hey, that's fine, that's what we need. Nowadays, when we try to identify a need for such a gadget, before we come much longer, someone, a private company or private guy has developed it and put it on the market. So we can't keep up the pace. The other one is that there is a limited economic resources for creating new resources from the public authorities when media changes. And media changes very fast. The example from just before, the Danish Travel Planner was developed for internet use, and in a period of maybe 2 or 3 years, from 15% and up, and from 15% was from smartphones and mobile devices, and 2 or 3 years later, almost 80% was from these kind of devices. And that requires another technical solution to support these devices. And well, it takes a lot of money and takes a lot of innovation power to do that. Maybe not always possible for public authorities. The last question is here, who really knows the end user's needs? The example for the travel planner, in the old days, we were some guys who sat down and said, well, the public should have such an device. They must need it. It must be necessary for them. And most of the times we were right, but I also know a lot of situations where the public has developed some kind of gadgets that no one needed and no one wanted to use afterwards. Maybe it was still a very good gadget and very intelligent, but it didn't fit into the needs. We should change to use the unused innovation power that is among private companies and app developers. I saw in a report on the internet the quote that I have here on the slide, the nature of innovation is that developments often comes from unlikely places. So let's use this free innovation power among private companies. All this leads to the conclusion here on this slide that we need open data. We need to set data free so that private companies and private developers can use the data. I have seen in another report stating that the value of the open data is several tens of billions of euros annually, just in EU alone. And I had always also seen that 75% of this value, the value of open data, is in the transport sector. So the conclusion here is that there's a value in the business cases for service providers using these data, but there's also value for the public authorities setting these data free if it will lead to more intelligent mobility that will reduce the energy consumption and the congestion in the cities. To make open data work, open access is required. It's not enough to have open data. The data has to be free, and I have here chosen to mention three dimensions that the data should be free on. It should be technically free. That is, they should be accessible in all common formats. Should not be maybe not even an Excel format, because Excel requires you to have Windows, some Microsoft program to read it. It should be maybe a comma-separated file, or even better, a web service that you can access from all kinds of programs. And of course, when we're talking traffic data, most of the time, the greatest value from traffic data is when you have them real time. You have to know what is happening in the traffic right now, or even better, you have to know what is happening in half an hour. The last thing is very difficult to give you, but at least you have to have data in real time if they should be used for changing mobility behavior. The next thing is that the data should be legally free. That is, you should put no undue limitations on use of the data, and you should have no legal rubbish. You should maybe make a license agreement with the users that is no more than one page of the paper with the 3 and 4 most important points on it, and then let it be up to the users to utilize these data in the best way. And the data should be economically free. People say, okay, I don't have to pay for these data. Well, there's a little question mark here. Because free could also mean that you have to pay the cost for delivering the data to you. Public data might have a value, so someone could consider selling these data. But you have to think that all public data is owned by everyone. We are all the public. So they should be free for use. Also, because as I'm trying to tell you here, the public has an interest in spreading these open data, especially when we're talking about traffic data. Of course, data might be priced between private companies and from private companies to end users, if the private companies have been doing something with the data that had brought added value to the data. So, when the public have made data open and accessible, we need a European-wide platform for cooperative mobility systems to get access to these data. And this is where MOBiNET comes into the picture. In the real world, you see PTAs invest in data consistency, presentation, and web services, but probably no one will find and exploit these data if the public authority stops there, just making them viable for people, but not selling them. So if you really want someone to use this open data, you have two different options. Either you can invest in creating your own user community, and that can take a fair amount of resources to do that, because then you have to service these user community all the time. Or you can join MOBiNET and benefit from the services that MOBiNET is offering to a data supplier. MOBiNET is offering a one-point access to transport data for service developers. That is, when sometime in the future, almost everyone is using MOBiNET, if a service provider wants to find some data, he will go to MOBiNET and find them there, instead of him having to go to a lot of different cities to ask if data is available or not. Then he can just go to MOBiNET and find them there. So your data will be found much easier than if you just have your own web services. MOBiNET also has an organized framework for legal agreements for data use. Well, I said just a minute ago that the legal issues should be as small as possible. So maybe that's not a big issue, but from a data supplier point of view, that would be kind of another issues from if you were a service supplier developing some apps on top of these data. But at least you have a formal framework for organizing the legal agreements with your data users. MOBiNET also has a built-in payment framework if that is needed. Probably it's not needed if you put your data on for free. But if you want to have some basic costs for delivering these data covered, you can have it via the payment systems in MOBiNET. Or if it is refined data or functions, you could use the payment framework here. In Aalborg, for example, we are making a prototype for a parking payment systems to the end users, where the end users can pay their parking taxes directly to the parking owner through MOBiNET. And there we can utilize the MOBiNET built-in payment framework. MOBiNET also has an ID system for all the users and all suppliers. So you can have a control of who is using your data or misusing your data if that is the case. And then at last there is the App Store for end users. So you will make sure that if someone develops some app or system using your data, there is an easy access for people to find these systems. So your data will be utilized and in this way help to change the mobility behavior in your city. So the last slide, I'll make the conclusions. We had, from the public authorities' view, 3 challenges: the energy security, the environmental issues, and the need for mobility. 3 challenges we should solve at the same time. And I say that the solution for this, some part of the solution for this, is change the mobility behavior. And for doing that, we need open data with open access, and we need private environment information spread, and we need MOBiNET as a common data and information solution platform, making it possible for people to find our data and making it possible for end users to find the system using our data. Yes, this was my presentation. Questions? No? No questions? Okay. Thank you. Okay, there was a question. How many countries and public authorities are we targeting? Well, I would say we are targeting the whole Europe. So all countries in Europe is our target, and at the same time all public authorities in Europe is our target. And it's our ambition that as many of these potential data suppliers as possible will use the MOBiNET for spreading the data.
Well, hello. So my name is Rasmus Olsen, and I'm from Aalborg University, where I work as an associate professor within the field of network and communication technologies. Before I start, I would also like to welcome you all here to Aalborg on behalf of Aalborg University. So I hope that you have a great time here, and yes. So what I would like to talk about here is related to open data, but just seen more from the developer's point of view. Yes. Services and applications that we are developing may be, to a large extent, very virtual and live in the environment of that can be totally regarding the geographical environment. But the data that we're using as input may absolutely not be. In fact, a lot of the data that we're using here is related to the physical world, and this link between the physical world and this virtual environment that our services lives in gives us a lot of challenges, and but also a lot of possibilities that we can make good use of. And this is exactly one of the things that we're trying to do here in MOBiNET. Looking a bit more on how we are developing and how we are producing these services, one of the key elements in this process to understand the requirements that we're trying to fulfill. Because at the end of the day, it is us as developers who has to map all these concepts and all these ideas into running code that we can not only demonstrate to standardization tasks, activities, but also go and sell to the end customers and to all the businesses involved. So if you do not understand these requirements that we have, it is very hard for us to produce something that is at the end of the day useful. And in the settings of MOBiNET, where we have different actors and different interests in the services that we are trying to deliver, this is very, very critical to understand. So this is, of course, also why we have these big projects that we gather around and try to understand each other to get a system that can provide the right services, business to business and end users to business. But this process leads us also along the way into some challenges that may or may not be so super visible. And some of the key elements here are related to the interfaces and the data formats that we have already heard a little bit about, data quality and security and trust in this information that we are using at the end of the day. If these are not understood properly and we are not addressing these things properly, we end up providing services and applications that at the end the user of these will not trust and ultimately it will fail. So it is critical we try to understand these elements in the whole process. So the idea is, of course, that we have an easy and uniform access to the data that we're trying to use, because we can then focus on developing the application and service that we provide. How we get the information is not necessarily our problem. Because if we as application developers also need to worry about that, we would have to spend a lot of effort in trying to get all the details, geographical locations on this and that, and so on, and sensor locations and so on. So in that aspect, delegating the access of the information to the public authorities or whoever will control this enables us to focus on the service development itself. And that's a critical point in this, that we can do this. So this separation is giving us an opportunity to simplify the end user in the mobility that we want, because again, if we can decouple the information collection and provision in terms of data providers, we can focus on service and application development and providing the end service, the use of this information in practice. It also allows, of course, for maybe local dedicated data provider ecosystems and so on. But there are some critical issues here again related to standards, legislation, and willingness to share this data, because as the end service we provide is no better than the input that we get into the system, and if the data we get in is crap, then usually you also get a not so good service out of it. So as Jens and Christian already mentioned, if the data that we can access as developer is not good, or they are missing information and so on, then what service can we provide? And again, the end result will be the end user will not trust this service, because it always directs us to a wrong location, or it guides us to wrong decisions. Then eventually we will stop using this application and things will fail. So some of these points here are quite critical and involves not only the application developers but also the data providers. And the particular related to data quality that we can get from the data providers is critical. When we talk about real-time or near real-time needs for the user to be guided through traffic and so on, of course we also have to trust that the information we get is more or less consistent with the world that we live in. If it's not matching, if it's proposing that there's a traffic jam, but obviously there's no traffic jam, or the other way around, again, the trust in the application and service will disappear over time. While the problem may not be on the application, but on the data provider's point of view. So this is an example of the kind of trust that we as developers would have to put into the data providers. Is the data accurate enough? Yes, so we get this GPS coordinate, but maybe there's a high inaccuracy on it, so we can not provide the right level of service to the end user. Do we get the complete data set? If they're missing items in the data elements we get, then can we still guarantee the type of service we want to deliver to the end user? So how can we as developers guarantee the quality of the service if we cannot trust the data provider is a critical element. And again here, sitting down and understanding from data provider, application developers and system developers is critical, because all these things are influencing each other. The last point I would like to discuss a little bit here is related to security and trust aspect, because everything again boils back to the situation that if we cannot trust the data that we get to our service, then how can we convince the end user that we should use this application or this service? So what does that mean? That means also we have to trust that we are not using some fake information provider. So that means we have to have trust established behind the scene. That means that we have to focus on also all these elements of key exchange and these things to have a technical trust level. We need to be sure that the data that we are exchanging is has its integrity kept, because if we for some reason consider some malicious attackers trying to manipulate these things, again we could have a situation where we could ruin businesses. I may be developing an application that looks like my competitors, but hey, I don't want him to provide the right level of service. I could maybe manipulate the data he gets and so on. So all these kind of things we need to be sure of as well, which costs in terms of development and test at the end of the day. Last thing is related to the access control. Again, here we don't want we want the right users and the right actors involved in the system. We don't want anybody with malicious thoughts or someone who's trying to disrupt our businesses here to interfere with our system. So, given the time slot I had, these were just a brief overview of some of the aspects as developers that we have to face, and linking this to the data providers and the whole community as we're trying to establish here in MOBiNET, but also beyond. So the whole ecosystem here, and this is, I believe, one of the critical points that we are actually trying to join hands in this process, because if we just work in different directions, we will not be able to understand what are the different needs, and thereby if you don't understand the different needs from each other, we also have a hard time implementing the stuff at the end of the day. So with these words, I would like to hear if there are any questions to me.
I think the questions that you raised are very good questions, but I don't think we do have the answers already. I mean, it's a bit of the dilemma between the Apple iStore and the Google Play idea. Do you want to control all the data and check it and see if it's valid, or do you leave it to the community and there will be an integrator who will do that for you? And I think that's for MOBiNET also a question of how to approach this, and is it a role for MOBiNET or somebody else?
That's a very good point, actually. Yes. Where are the responsibilities in providing this information and handling these data? Because at the end of the day, we have to provide the right level of service, and if someone in that chain fails, it's the one at the end who has to argue with the customer, why can't you provide the right service? But it may not be me as application developer, it may be somewhere in the whole system that things are going wrong. And how do we delegate this responsibility? It's an open question, I think. Okay.
Okay. The bottom one. Confidentiality of the data. Yes, that's also a critical point, and I think here. Yes. What about confidentiality of data? In some countries, for example, Germany, it is not welcome to give data for confidentiality reasons. People do not want to be tracked, and they want to keep their freedom. But with real-time information, they might not have this freedom, since others will have means to know where they are. I think this is an excellent question, which is very, very relevant in these days. Also, if you take Facebook, for example, there has been this discussion: should you put your location? I'm on holiday. Of course, I want to share this with my friend on Facebook, but then you have all the your insurance companies are objecting because you're telling also the thieves that you're not there. You have the Big Brother issue with Google. Whatever I search for is stored and so on for later investigation. And I think here really we have some big challenges, and maybe the biggest of them all, because if at the end we are not allowed to use this data, then it's kind of a showstopper. We cannot do much. And I think the collaboration with the public authorities here are critical in that sense. And I see no clear answer here, but there's some political work also to be addressed. Yes? Yes?
If that's a question from you, then the answer is yes. That's mostly what we're doing here, is taking data from vehicles and using that data, processing that data to provide services. Some people would say that transport may only involve somebody walking around with a platform, but a lot of data is already there in vehicles, in systems already. When it comes to using that data, if there's a system that's been put in to buy a car manufacturer, there has to be some agreement between the owner of the car, who owns the data, and the car manufacturer to use that data. Whether they're using it for internal purposes or they're using it to provide services to third parties. Those kinds of arrangements are already in place. It's not like we're going to invent new work to do that. And all of the car manufacturers are also very aware of the potential for, at least in Europe, EU regulations that they have to probably do that for privacy.
And that's yeah, you're absolutely right. But I think here also part of the challenges lies that you have different countries, and there may be different angles to it, which makes it very, very complicated for developing a system that takes into account all these different.
It's complicated. It's not possible. And that's part of what MOBiNET will be doing, is developing the ways that will allow those things to happen in a seamless way.
Yeah, so the point for those on the webinar is that it's a part of MOBiNET that we're trying to address this also issue with the different legislations to the degree that we can demonstrate at least the things. So, and hopefully that would also be one of the selling point of this system, I would say, because it's not a trivial task. I don't know.
Any further questions, comments? Yes, we have one.
I think it should, the delivered data should be based on voluntary basis. But if you want to use these services, you also should say, well, I have to deliver some data to this service.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it would not be so big a problem because what people want to use the service.
I think, yeah, and through the webinar, the comment here was on if you want to use these services, you should also provide data such that you can actually benefit and give at the same time. I think that's an interesting point, and I think you're absolutely right here. I think, and also when you look at how Facebook does it, I mean, you see many people are willing to share whatever information actually. So I think it's just when lawyers come in and all this, it becomes a little bit complicated. But there's of course some reasons for that. So yes. Thank you.
So do we have the next presenter? Mike? Oh. Okay, sorry. So your presentation was this one? Yes, and there. Okay.
Hello, good everybody. Good morning. My name is Guido Di Pasquale from PreService. I'm the innovation unit manager within PreService. And before giving our point of view, the industries or service provider point of view on MOBiNET, why we are MOBiNET, it's worth to give few words about who we are. So PreService is an Italian-based company providing ICT solutions for mobility in general, historically for passenger transport and public transport. And we are now investing a lot on sustainable mobility, providing also solutions for smart cities. Just to give you an overview, we are an SME, as I said. We are about 100 employees in Italy with several headquarters. The headquarters is in the middle of Italy, and we have other commercial bases around Italy. And we cover almost all public transport companies and many regional and local authorities in providing solutions for their operational services. The business areas that we have there are three. The historical one is the ERP for public transport companies. At the core of everything there is the ticketing solution, which is used for payment of public transport services, but also for smart cities applications. And the latest one is the recent one. is about smart cities and applications for smart travelers and citizens. Well, especially for the latest one, we are looking for something that can help us enhancing and enriching our application. And we think that MOBiNET can help us, can support us on giving us a European-wide let's say European-wide development of our solutions. So I have to today speak about open data and open services and what is the point of view of the industry, of the service provider. And I started with a few examples of mobility services that requires the data. Some of them are business for my company, like multimodal travel assistant or demand responsive transport or parking services. Some of them are part of the project, and will be developed within the project framework. So I listed there, for example, the multimodal travel assistant is one of the most important because it shows how the necessity of many sources, many data and the services to have a real European-wide multimodal travel assistant. The same is for usage-based insurance, which is one of the primary use cases within the project, or the green light optimization speed advice, and going on also electromobility services or car and truck parking services. All of them have a big needs of data if we want to provide innovative solutions to the end users. So we can say that data is everywhere. There is a huge amount of data coming from authorities, from operators in general, from end users, from the smart cities, but how to get hold on it. So the problem today is for us, for a private company, is that we have to collect this data from different sources, and we have to knock on the door of all of them asking for data, and most of the time we can get them, but in many cases we cannot get them because there are well, there can be also some other problems. For example, when a transport company delivers data, open the data, they will also show some lack of service. Let's say if there is a delay or there are some problems in their services. For example, in our case, we would like to have the railway company data in Italy, and there's no way to get them. They don't want to deliver the data to us, and so at the end the winner application, the killer application, is the one that has the privilege to have this data. And we can say that all this kind of work, collecting data, going to the local authorities, to the cities, is difficult, time-consuming, and expensive. So opening data is the first step. So the public authorities has to hopefully open data to make them available. Of course, based on terms and conditions. It means that whoever is going to use this data has to be aware of this and consider the licensing and the terms and conditions that the authorities is publishing data as given. But still, this can be local. I mean, if the North Denmark region is opening their data, well, I can go to the authority and ask for this data, how to use them, but I will not solve my problem because I would like to have all of kind of data within whole Europe. So the real need for us is to have one-stop shop to open data and services across Europe. So that's the main challenge, and that's and this is the second step that MOBiNET should solve. So the next step is that MOBiNET should act as a one-stop shop for us, and where we know where to go to find data, we know where to go to find the services that we want, and we know that the MOBiNET framework platform can provide some basic features, functionalities that we can reuse without reinventing the wheel every time. For example, accounting, user identity management, or billing facilities, and especially the service directory, the catalog that Paul was mentioning, where we can find the services and the data we need very easily. And going back to what we do, Blue Service and our applications, in the last 2 years we have launched an application that, well, it's a platform where the end user application is the front end, let's say, and this platform is called My Cicero, and it is providing several services to the end users, like travel planners or traveler assistants, payment and booking and payment of a long distance bus, for example, or payment of a ticket of local bus company ticket, and parking payment. So find a parking slot and pay for it. Of course, the problem with this is that this is local, that we have to go to the parking service provider and ask their data, access to their payment facilities, or we have to go to the local private or public transport company and provide them our system. Maybe they have their own system and they don't want to change it. So our vision on how to enrich and to expand through Europe our platform, thanks to MOBiNET, is drafted on this diagram, but basically is that MOBiNET will collect for us all the available services. Some of them is our service that is on the MOBiNET catalog. Some of them is an existing service, back office service. Other components are the contents, data that we can, of course, get through the platform. Thanks to this, we can expand geographically our application, but not only, because we will have new services, new applications, new data, and we can think about new features, new functionalities to add to our platform that today we don't even think about. Just to conclude, the business benefit that we see in MOBiNET, with MOBiNET, as I said, scaling the service across Europe, and this is one of the main objectives of our participation in the project. A large portfolio of users, because we think that thanks to this we can reach more users, and more users for us means more tickets sold, and more tickets sold for us means more transactions and then more income. That's the chain. There is a cost reduction because MOBiNET is supposed to take care about several aspects that we don't want to, or we are not so empowered to take care about it. For example, contracting, legal, to provide common templates for agreements, for example. And also, as I said, to have an open exchange of competencies with other service providers that can enrich our portfolio. So this means that more data content services can offer more services, reaching more customers, and thus leading to a greater gain. That's all. Thank you for your attention. Any questions? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Latest. Oh, that's interesting. I think it's that one. No. What's the name? Oh yes, this there's one. Sorry, I did. The next one. Okay. The microphone is up. The microphone is up. Good morning, everybody. My name is Matthias Mann. I'm working for PTV, and it's a great pleasure to be here. And it's a great experience. I think it's the first time that I'm a presenter in a webinar. And as we see, it's not so easy because sometimes you're looking at the audience and on the screen behind you, and then you have to remember to speak to the microphone, which is just in front of you. Well, I could make it very, very short because everything I intended to say is already said. So perhaps that's good, but nevertheless, I will go through the slides. PTV is a German company having two main business areas. One is traffic planning, traffic demand modeling, traffic micro simulation, and the other one is everything which is around the logistics chain. So we are providing solutions for transportation planning, fleet management, and so on. And I'm here with a new aspect we are dealing right now, is the usage of real-time information along the logistics chain, and certainly, because that's why I'm here also, what we expect from a solution like MOBiNET. We have certain needs which we have is our demand for solutions which support the introduction and the easy rollout of mobility solutions in the ITS domain. And we hope that we will find a supply for that. Perhaps it's MOBiNET. We have an application which is out there and running. That's Truck Parking Europe, which addresses first the end user. But behind that, as soon as you start collecting data, perhaps there's something else, there's business behind. And for the conclusion, you will see what happens. So what is very important for us and what we are looking for is a common marketplace for ITS and mobility solutions. There are some solutions out there which are either locally, which address perhaps only business-to-business relationships. So in Germany, it's the mobility data marketplaces, where you can also already look for mobility-related information. And regarding the end user, we already heard that there are also solutions like Google Play Store, or from the car manufacturers, there's MirrorLink, where you have the possibility to look especially for mobility applications or services which you are interested in. But
that's not a common solution. There are many different solutions, and if I'm interested in mobility or ITS services, I need to know where to look, and we believe that a common marketplace for that might be useful for the end user as well, for the companies involved in business there. If you provide or develop such a marketplace, it's very important that you take care about standardized or common interfaces to make it easier for companies or for the users to get access to the services and the information there. We also believe that it's very important to have a common framework for data licensing. If you look at Germany, for example, you can approach the different cities, but they don't have a common approach how to supply data and how to charge for data. So it's very, very time-consuming for companies to collect information from various cities, and there are lots of. We believe that having a common understanding for rules and regulations, so which are related to a marketplace. Remember, we are coming together to work together, and for that I think it's very important to have a common understanding, to agree to common rules, to agree how to behave if you are offering services in this framework. We don't believe that there will be a single platform. It's a distributed solution, because as soon as you have something centralized, if this one is leaving the market for whatever reason, everything breaks down. That's what we don't want to have. We already heard data quality is very important, rubbish in, rubbish out. So perhaps we can find common rules how to define data quality or service quality, and also that's a very important aspect for the public authorities. So if you're talking to German authorities, they say, well, you can have our data, but we are not really in the data service business, so we don't care about service level agreements. That's already an issue. IT security, it's important, and we already heard privacy of the data and the user, it's important as well. So we were looking around for solutions, and surprise, surprise, I think MOBiNET is covering most of those aspects. And that's very interesting to see, and we hope that that will be a project which not just ends in, I think, 1 year, 2 years, and nothing survives. So that's not what we are looking for. And just to let you know, there are parallel activities in Germany which are doing just not the same but very similar things. And also there, we believe if the project ends and everything goes into the storage rooms, well, we do not need to do those projects. We need a solution for afterwards. So I think all the aspects I already mentioned, which we see needs or where is our demand, are covered by MOBiNET. So it's connecting business to business, it's connecting to the end user. You're considering common rules and regulations, you're considering IT security, privacy is an issue, so I'm happy. Coming to our applications, as I already told, we are also involved in the logistics area, and as you all know, the logistics chain is very complex. And in the past, normally you did focus on optimizing the planning part. The more information there is available, the more you can do on the optimization in real time, so during the process. And for that you need data. One of the challenges we picked out is the issue of parking. I heard that today quite a few times. Parking is an issue. So if you look at the logistics chains, and especially if there you have a long driving time for the drivers, he needs to rest. He needs to have facilities along the road where he can park. And we already heard, well, improving the infrastructure is time-consuming and expensive. So perhaps telematic solutions or IT can perhaps not solve the problem, but make it a little bit easier for the driver to find a place where he can rest. And if you look on that in an overview, you will see, well, as soon as you have information what's happening along the road, for example, there's a traffic jam, that influences the driving time or the driving times of the estimated driving times of the driver to its destination, and perhaps he will not be able to reach it in time. So perhaps there's a possibility for a stop. And to do a stop, you need the information where you can stop and what facilities are there. So that's why we develop Truck Parking Europe. For the one side, it's really a community application. We are addressing the driver, the truck driver, because he has needs along his road. On the other side, we are collecting information about parking spaces, and I do not talk only about officially available parking spaces. It's parking spaces which are collected by the community because they park not everywhere, but in many places where they see there is services around, either shopping areas or fuel stations or whatever, and there's place to park their truck. So if you have this data, just static data for the first moment, you could already integrate that in your planning systems because you get a lot more options to optimize your tour. And if we combine that, so on the one hand we have the end user, the driver, and on the other side we are looking for commercial partners to share or to distribute this information, we are right at MOBiNET. We want to connect the end user and to the end user, and we want to, well, offer new possibilities that companies can find together and work on common solutions to optimize whatever they want. So what is the good about Truck Parking Europe? So now I'm trying to be a salesman or working on the marketing machine. At the moment it's one of the largest community in Europe. I can't read the figure, but I think we have more than 10 or 20,000 downloads of these applications. So that's a lot. This application is available for Android and iOS, so I think nearly everybody could use it. And there are a lot of active users, which is very important as well. Download doesn't say anything. They need to be active. They need to improve the information which is there, either on giving information about the quality of the parking facilities or just saying, well, there's a new facility. Please add that to your database and rank the parking places. So it's just community application. It's very interesting. So then it's about number of parking spaces we can offer. All around Europe, we collected 15,000 parking facilities, and I think that's outstanding. So there is no other platform available in Europe right now which offers this amount of data. And 5,000 by that from these 15,000 were added by the community. So PTV started to collect parking spaces in an initial phase to already have an offer for the community, and now the community is using this possibility to improve the quality of the service. So that's also an important aspect of it. We started with a huge number and perhaps low quality, and now the community is improving the quality. That's an interesting concept. And the best of it, it's for free. For the user, it's completely free. And even for interested parties, the use of this application is for free. So if you are interested to distribute this application to your customers or to your community, you can talk to us, you can brand it with your company name. The only thing we want to have, and that's our goal, to have a common data source for this information. We don't say this data source will be closed for everybody else, but we believe that for the trucker community, a single data source is much more valuable than having tens of them, because then they start to collect information from different sources. They need to integrate it into one system, so that's very complex. So We believe one data source. The next step you can imagine is perhaps having a booking and reservation service behind, because knowing where a parking space is and perhaps getting information about the occupancy, that's already good. But having the security, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but continue, that the parking space is available for you if you need it, because you know your resting hours. That's the next step. And you could integrate that into the planning side of the transportation chain as well, so everything is secured. So that might look like that's just a screenshot to go through the parking spaces which are in your app, choose one, start the booking, finished. And yeah, I think you can imagine a lot of further applications which you can just add on top of this basic service. So booking of secure parking places, it's an issue. It's also an issue for the insurance companies. Normally you have to provide a park or to guarantee that if you're transporting valuable goods, that you are parking in areas which are secure. Conclusion. So now the audience here will see it. We have the MOBiNET platform in the middle. We are using it. On the left-hand side, you will see the application which is offered for the end user. And down there's a company which is PTV, which offers its services using the platform. And now we are looking forward to get a lot of questions from other companies or public authorities interested in this concept and see what's happening. Thanks for your attention. Any questions?
When you say booking, the truck drivers book parking place, who are you booking with?
Who? So the question was whom we are booking with if the truck drivers have the possibility to book a parking place. Well, I don't know, for Europe, in Germany there are private parking facilities operators, and some of them already have websites to book a parking place. So we could connect to them. The question is if it's really the truck driver or the transportation planner who does the booking, but that's one solution. As soon as you go towards the official parking spaces, so operated by the public authorities, at the moment there's no way, but they are working on compact parking topics, so optimize the parking facilities by just ranging the trucks in a better way. And there are two options to do that. Either you go for a reservation and booking service, so you know when they are coming and you know when they need to leave, and so that's all closed. There are others which are operating just on site, no booking, no reservation, so you can't do that. But at least there is a way to guarantee, if you go for the booking part, the parking space. It's just up to the operator or to the driver to be sure. What's the question? Are you planning to cooperate with other projects? No, what's the benefit in PTV in terms of finding personal? Yes, so the business model, that's a very interesting thing. So at the moment, oh no, not at the moment, we are collecting data which is improving the quality of other services we offer. We can integrate these parking spaces in our tour planning system, so we improve other products we already have. The costs for these applications, they are not too high. We have a service quality which is behind, so we check the information provided by the community, but that's reasonable. And if we go the next step, so for example towards the booking service, there's business, or towards cooperation with other partners, there could be business. So at the moment it's started as a kind of marketing activity, so we are into logistics. The driver is at the end of the chain, and if we are able to make him happy, perhaps we will find other ways of making business, because we could improve products we already have, and we can find new business partners. Okay? No more questions? Oh.
When I drive on the highway, I noticed that the challenging part is not to find parking spaces for the trucks, but to find places where there's actually space. And that's still, I think, a challenge here.
Yes and no, so that's the second step. So the question was, in the end, is there information about occupancy of the parking spaces? And in the first step, we didn't have that information. We were just collecting information about where are parking facilities and how they are equipped. On the second version, which is I think going live 1 month ago, the driver has the possibility to provide information about occupancy in a very easy way. So information about occupancy is there. It's very, it's rated in rough steps, so it's not about 10%, 15%, it's rather full, free, or overloaded. And we are also in contact with public authorities. If they have information about occupancy, we integrate it into our data source. So in the second step, or in the step right now available, you know about occupancy, and it's considered in providing recommendations to the drivers as well. More questions? No? Then thank you again.
Hi, good morning. My name is Benjamin Ernst. I'm with the DLR, the German Space Center, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the inner workings of the MOBiNET platform, which is MOBiCenter, as we call it, and also about the key functionalities from the components which MOBiCenter is offering. So, just a little perspective where we started. We had this vision of MOBiNET, where on the one hand is the consumer and on the other hand are the service providers, and in the middle there is this block of MOBiNET which connects those two. To get to this vision, we had first to establish some procedures and workflow mechanisms and define an architecture which is scalable to provide a Europe-wide service or platform which can be used. Also, we had to create a distributed development environment, because we are several partners all across Europe working on those components which we create, and in the end we had to deploy those components on a hosted environment, and first of all this is a test environment. So what we came up with is this basic architecture picture where you have this big blue block on the bottom, which is the MOBiCenter platform. This platform is divided into two spaces. The first one, or the bottom one, is the platform infrastructure services, which is the core component of MOBiNET. And there are several components integrated in this core platform. This is service management, which will be the service or app directory. Then we have billing support, some communication support, and identity management, and on top of this there's a web portal which connects to service developers. And also integrated into the MOBiCenter platform there are core mobility services, which can be any number of services which are also running at the core of MOBiCenter. Yes. And to connect to the users, we have two user interfaces. One is for the end user, it's the Mobi agent, which is running on mobile devices. And then we also have the dashboard, which is a user interface for service providers, which can be used via web browsers. And accompanying this user interface or dashboard, We also have a service development kit guiding and giving tutorials how to develop services which could be run or used by MOBiNET. So with this architecture in mind, we identified the core components of the MOBiCenter platform, which are service directory, identity management, billing system, a communication agent which can talk to the MOBI agent, which is the user interface on the end user devices, a dashboard which is the user interface for service providers, and an SDK to help to develop those services. And now I'm going quickly to talk about what key functionalities are right now available for the first release of MOBiCenter. We have, for security, we have an identity manager where you can create users and roles, and which offers a MOBiNET OpenID provider, which can, for instance, be used to log into the dashboard. Then we have a communications agent and manager. These are two counterparts. One running in the agent is running in the MOBiCenter platform, and the manager is running on the mobile devices within the MOBI agent, which can offer real-time data transfer between service providers and the MOBI agent, so the end user devices. And it has also a geofencing service built in. Then we have the service and app directory. These directories can store service or app descriptions, so not the services themselves, but descriptions to these services. And these descriptions are ontology-based with XML or RDF format and are easily extensible to future needs that might come up. And you can use these directories to search for services or apps based by geolocation, service type, or service ID. Then we have two user interfaces. The first one is the dashboard. It's intended mainly for service providers. Right now you can use as I mentioned, the MOBiNET OpenID provider to authenticate or log in, and then there are widgets available where you can manage the services or apps from the service or app directory and search for them. And then we have the end user interface which is the MOBI agent, where you can also manage and search the apps on your from MOBiCenter or the app directory on your device, and also it's the basis for other apps, MOBiCenter apps, which could run on the MOBI agent. And it offers an API for those apps to talk to the MOBiCenter backend in a transparent and easy way. And then we have the Service Development Kit, SDK, which is on the one hand offers a virtual machine, which is a development environment for developers of the platform or developers for services who can use this environment to create platform services or services which will use the platform and test them on their local development machine. We offer an Eclipse IDE, a pre-configured Eclipse IDE, where there's also a service description editor included, which can be used to create service or app descriptions. And then we offer also some basic tutorials how to develop a MOBiNET service or to migrate an existing service so it can be run or used within MOBiCenter. So this is what we have done for release 1. So MOBiCenter 1.0 is now available, and we started out with this vision, created an architecture, and now we have basic prototypes of all these components and the functionality which I just mentioned running. And you can go to this URL, dashboard.com1mobinet.eu, and see the dashboard of the MOBiCenter platform. And if you have a user account, you can actually log in and search for apps or services. So that's it. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the discussion about this. Sorry, the question was if you are not a MOBiNET partner, how you can get a user account to log into the dashboard. Right now you have to contact us, I think, through ERTICO or anyone you know, and we will create an account for you, and for the future we have to develop or create a procedure how to do so. But you can contact us, and then we create an account for you and give you the information.
Same questions come with how can you subscribe to the platform? How can you access the MOBiNET services directly via web services?
We have some basic guidelines available, and this month there's also a new tutorial from the SDK which describes how to use the platform from an end-user perspective, also from a service provider perspective, and there are some deliverables which describe, for instance, the service directory and how it can be used via web services or REST APIs. They are already available, yes. Okay, they are on the website.
Yeah, maybe it's good to emphasize that MOBiNET is being developed in 3 releases. The first release, as Benjamin explained, is to get all the components and architecture in place to get it functional working. And we've got some documents to describe how to do that. And now the validation within the consortium at least is taking place to check this functionality and check the documents, whether it's all clear and how to use it. And then the second release was really meant to go public, to go to the outside, so that all the users would be able to use it fairly easy. Yeah? It's kind of a plug and play that we know how to do it. And so this first validation step is also to get feedback on this documentation and how to improve it, so that it will be easy for non-MOBiNET partners to use and access and make use of this. That it doesn't exclude, of course, already outside MOBiNET partners like PGP to do it, but I think now we will have to do it in cooperation with companies, and in the second release they should be able to do it themselves.
I can hear you sound because I hope good enough to Yeah, very good. I have another question. So is performance guaranteed when services are ported to the MOBiNET environment?
Yeah, services are not really ported to the environment, so they don't run on the environment. They still run on your environment where you develop it. They are just registered in the directories, service or app directory. It's not a guarantee from MOBiNET or MOBiCenter for the performance of services. It's a guarantee you have to give yourself. Yes.
Is there any catalog of data available?
Right now we have the directories in place, service directory, but you can search in this. But as we said, it's just more or less the first release is the prototype release to get everything working. It depends who enters data into these directories. To this extent, it's not that much that's right now available. Yeah, maybe you can put in my email address. It's on the screen, yes.
Which EU region are served by MOBiNET?
You have to repeat the question.
Which EU region is? Oh, I actually don't because.
Which EU region are served
She has
by
mic.
MOBiNET? Yeah, that's actually from the webinar.
So which EU region? Right now there's no limit on the region because you can enter your services, and within the service description you can enter a geographical area where your service is valid, and you can search for that, but it's open to any region. Anything? Okay, so that's it. Thank you.
Okay, now it's time for a short coffee break. We are really behind schedule. So please,
5 minutes.
First to your left and take some coffee and start.
Dear people, we will take a 5-minute break. We will try to respect this as much as possible. So please don't go. We'll be back soon. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. So, I'm going to talk about a use case that we've been working on here locally with us from Aalborg University. My name is Lars, by the way, with the region and with Gatehouse. And this is a use case about making an automatic parking assistant for the end user to use. There we go. Okay, first a little general intro to this use case. So as I said, it's about making an automated parking assistant for the end user, which acts fully automatically, so preferably with as little input from the user as possible. So this involves, among some of the functionalities, is route guidance to the nearest or a selected car park, automatic check if the user is within the car park when his car is stopped, automatically initiating payment if it's a non-free parking lot, automatic notification if it's time-limited parking that his parking is about to run out, that he needs to move his car, or if he's set a timer saying that I will need to move in 1 hour because I didn't pay for anymore. So, and this app works based on live information about the car parks that we have here in Aalborg that the region has helped us get access to. And generally it utilizes a lot of the possibilities within MOBiNET. So first off, looking a little at the components of this parking assistant use case, we have first of all the app, which is in our case is an Android app. So this is in MOBiNET terminology what we would call a MOBiNET data consumer service. So that's the end user service that the end user has on his or her device, and it consumes data from some other service in the MOBiNET universe. And we have related to that app an app description that we have added to the app directory. I will also show that later. Furthermore, we have the parking info service, which again in MOBiNET terminology is the data provider service. So this is the one offering the data to us that we are using. So this could be, if we think a little about the truck parking that we heard about earlier, this could be some input to their system, for instance. However, this is only local for Aalborg for the time being, and it's only for regular cars, not trucks. So unfortunately, but the idea is the same. Then we have in our system also a map matching server. This is a little more specific because when we have a GPS fix on our smartphone, for instance, it's not always really accurate. This could be due to only being fixed to a few satellites or due to high buildings such as this one that make the accuracy of the location quite poor. So we use an algorithm called map matching that takes your samples, take a lot of samples from your location on your way to the car park. When you stop, we send this, or we feed these samples to the map matching algorithm. It then looks at your map or your location history and maps it to a digital map that we have of the area where the services are in. So in this way, we can get a more accurate estimation of your actual decision or actual position, and in that way determine if you are actually in the car park or not. For instance, if you're parked on the street right next to it. Finally, we have a billing service where for the moment, we have an agreement with the parking company, and we are using our own billing service with Gatehouse. But of course, later on, the goal is to use the MOBiNET Provider billing service. So if we take a look at this overview of how the components are distributed, we have in the center the end user device with the parking assistant app. We have to the left, we have the app directory and the service directory with the app description and the service description respectively. So these descriptions are just containing information about where we can find the services, where they apply, so where the service area is and what types they are, and some general information. I will go into that a little later.
On the right, we have the parking assistant app hosting. So somewhere where the app is being hosted, this could be Google Play. However, now it's not because it's a closed use case, so it's our own hosted Dropbox folder. We have the parking information service, which is hosted by Gatehouse for the moment. We have the map matching server with the algorithm, and where we have some digital maps, and then we have the billing provider service. If you look a little more into the service directory interactions, here we see a part of the service description where we have some of the key points I have circled. The top one, I don't know how clear it is, it's quite small because there's a lot of info in that. The top one is the endpoint, so where we can actually reach this service. It's a web service, so that's we got the URL and the port and stuff like that. Then the second circle from the top is the service area. So this is where this service applies to. Namely, for this service, it's covering a square of Aalborg. The third one is some information about what format this service is delivering to you when you contact it. So for now, we have just called it parking places, and this is some interface or format that we, in combination with Gatehouse, have defined. So what kind of information you will get from when you contact this service. And lastly is the service type, which is something we have just chosen, but it's a way to search for the service, which I will also describe a little further now. So the interactions with the service directory for us, first of all, we need to add this service description to the service directory. This is a one-time operation, and when it's there, and everybody can find it. How we interact with the service directory while during the use case, it's another story, because the app periodically checks the service directory for parking information services. So for the time being, we only have this one service providing parking information for Aalborg, so it will only find this single service. But the check for parking services is done based on using the discovery functionality of the service directory. This meaning that it inputs the service type and the location where it wants to find services of this type. So if you're in Aalborg, the app inputs your location, which is in Aalborg, and it inputs the service type, which is parking services. It will then find all the parking services that is available in Aalborg, for the time being only one. And it accesses this with a REST API. But if you want to add, if you want to try this use case out in another city, it's quite simple to add a new service containing parking information of your own city, adding a service description, and that's it. So looking at the app directory, where we have an app description, contains some simple basic information about what type of app this is. So for this case, an Android app, and runs on Android naturally. And also, more important, where the app is hosted. So this is where the user will be able to download the app from or install it from. Again, we only one time need to add this service description to the app directory for it to be there for people or for users to be able to see it. So to show that this actually can be done right now, just quickly. Here. So here we see a device. This is an emulated device, but we have a link to the app directory, which currently is just a web page. Unfortunately, we don't have the Mobi agent installed. Otherwise, this web interface would be available through the Mobi agent to access. So let's try to open it. The first page we see is it's quite simple for the time being. It gives you the option to search, where you have to input the service type. These are just some dummy services, at least for the most of them, but just to give an impression of how it could look, and of course there could be many, many, many more. So naturally you would want to be able to narrow down your search. So I know there's an app. Yes, an app that has a type of parking. So we find our parking assistant app, which is in the app directory. And as simple as it is, we click on the install button. Now we are forwarded to the hosting, the endpoint hosting that we put in the app description. This could, again, be the Apple iStore, iOS store, or it could be the Google Play Store, or for this very local use case, it's just my Dropbox folder. But we got the APK file, we can download it and install it. Yes. But moving on in the presentation. Okay, so let's take a look at what interactions the business user needs to do in our use case. Well, first off, you need to publish the app in the app directory by adding an app description. You need to publish the service in the service directory by adding a service description, as I mentioned before. You need to host the app. That's what we are doing, that I just showed you. And we need to host the service. That's what Gatehouse is doing. And we also, for our case, we also hosting the map matching server. But this again could be any other service that you would need for your use case to work. So if we take a look at the flow of the use case from the end user's point of view, you must say. First you go to your app directory interface. You search for the app you want to install, in this case parking. You find the app description, click on install. So now we are over to step 2, where you are directed to the app hosting site. You download and install the app. So now you have the app on the device. So now we are moving down to the second box in the middle and to step 3, where when you start the app, the first thing it does is to discover available parking information services. So let's say we start the app in Aalborg, it finds the local parking information service and it's ready to display parking information to you and assist you in parking. So this is actually step 4 we are going through, where it's fetching the live information of the parking places in Aalborg. Then the user is moving around, he's parking somewhere. His location might be a little inaccurate, it's not what you want to find out his accurate position, so he's feeding the map matching server with his samples of location, and it returns an estimated accurate position of the user. And if it's inside a parking lot, we can then say, okay, I need to initiate a parking. I need to initiate a parking payment, which is done by connecting the billing provider. As I mentioned earlier, it's quite easy to extend to other cities, because all you need to do is actually host a local service with the parking information of the city you are extending the use case to, and you need to add the service description to the service directory for the app to be able to find it. The app works out of the box. So here, naturally, the service should comply with the interface that is provided by the Aalborg Parking Service. So this again is the interface that we have agreed on in combination with Gatehouse. So there's a lot of different information. We will also show that in a little bit in the...
Just one question. You said add a new service description, but can you not just add new content and use the same app in another city? So that you just have the database of the parking spaces in another city, but you use the same.
I think you're asking about if you can just add the new information to the same service. You need to distinguish between service and app here. The app works in any city you want to put it in, but the app searches for parking information based on the location it's at. So it needs to find the parking information in Berlin, for example. So if it's in Berlin, it searches for parking service information in Berlin. But the current service we have here in Aalborg, it only has the coverage area of Aalborg. And currently in the service directory, you only have the possibility to have one coverage area per service. So for the time being, you will need to add another service description with a new coverage area, but otherwise basically containing the same thing. We have talked about in the future in the service directory to be able to extend the service description with multiple coverage areas. So it might be a possibility in the future, but for now you need to add another service description.
But only one app from the end user point of view.
Yes, exactly. Only one app for the end user point of view. The app will simply just search the service directory for parking information service providers, and if it's available, it can use it. Yeah. Okay. Furthermore, if you want to extend it, you can also have the possibility of adding this map matching data to a map matching server to, again, get the more accurate location estimations. However, it's not necessary. It's just to have a more accurate decision. Yeah, and as I mentioned, the billing service, we are currently using our own service, but the future goal is to use the MOBiNET provided one.
Wow. What is wrong with the current billing system?
So what's wrong with the current billing service? The current billing service is just, for the time being, a simple agreement with the parking company saying that we gather information of how many, or when and how many times the different users have parked different places, and then they send us a bill based on that. So it's not fully automated payment yet. That's what we might, it might be available through MOBiNET, so we might use it in that sense.
Okay, but I asked this for requirements for the billing, on what exactly functionality you're looking for in this billing component.
Yeah, so what functionality we're using for in the billing service, yeah. Yeah, one of the functionalities is that if we have this automated parking and automated payment, the parking attendant checking the cars if they are actually paying for parking, they need to be able to check it live. So they need to be able to check if this car, which has no ticket in the windshield, if this has initiated some parking payment. So we need to have some service or some interface somewhere where the parking attendant can go and check for this license plate. Okay, it has an active payment. It's fine. I don't need to give it a ticket. So we need this active payment somewhere. And yeah, currently we're just providing it with a simple web service together with Gatehouse. But future possibilities might be more interesting. Okay. Yes, so yeah, again, just to highlight it, if you want to extend it, you basically just have to host your own parking information service, and you have to add a service description to the service directory. Also, this billing provider, as I just answered a question about that, for the time being, it's just a local agreement with the parking company. And if you want to add more precise decisions in the app, you can add this digital map data, but it's not necessary. Okay, so let's see the actual thing working. Let's hope this works. Julie, can you still see the screen on the web webinar? Something was bound to go wrong. Okay. Okay, if you can give me the screen again, then I think it's ready.
I have two.
Yes, no. Yes, okay. Okay. Let's cross fingers now. Can you hear me now through the web interface also? Okay, great. So, yeah, we also already saw it a few times that things are bound to go wrong. I also stress this, we are running the app in an Android emulator. Things go wrong sometimes, so let's cross our fingers and hope everything runs smoothly for the demonstration of this parking application. Okay. Now, this emulator, we have the possibility of emulating location, so we can see how the parking, automated parking, automated payment will actually work in the app by feeding it locations. So, yes, let's try to open the app first. This, of course, as I also mentioned, it uses a web service for getting the live parking information, so it will require internet access to work, and also naturally location to be able to act automatically based on your location to initiate parking and similar. Okay, let's first look at the user info. So we have a pane here where we can input, I have already inputted my information, my name, email, phone number, license plate, other stuff. This information is, this page is what we will use to check if the user that is using the app is actually registered for a use case. So we have a limited number of users testing the app in the coming months. So this is what we'll use for that. Okay? Yes. Let's go to car info. So here we see information of all the cars we have added. Currently I have a car called Tesla. Yes, very nice car. And we have the possibility to select the car we are using currently. So we have two states in the app. We have a state where you're not in a car as a user, or you have a state where you're in a car, so you can initiate automatic payment and stuff like that. Okay, let's choose the car. Yes, and if I click the logo, we can see this is me right now. So, and also in the top, we can see that the Tesla is there. So this is the car I'm in right now. Okay, so let's see the functionality we call automatic park and pay. So we just got into Aalborg, we just got off the highway, and we want to, we're going to Nordkraft, so we know there are a couple of parking places right out here. So we are going to the one called Østerhavn to begin with. This is the red one up here. Yeah. Yeah, we're driving to that.
It's still easy to see him.
Yes. So now my assistant Rafael is driving the car. He's French, so excuse his driving.
I'm Italian.
Yes. Okay, so we end up at the parking lot, and we stop here. But in a short moment we'll see, okay, it's asking, are you parked here at Østerhavn? So this is the name of the parking lot. But we realized this is not the parking lot we wanted to go to. So let's cancel it. Swiping it away. Now we will go to actually the parking lot just south of it, called Sømandshjemmet. It's a small home right here with a parking lot. So we'll drive to that one. Yeah, we added, okay, there you go. So it asks, are you in this parking lot? And yes, I am. So I'll slowly be walking, I'll be exiting the car and start walking towards Nordkraft. Yeah, and we can see currently we still have the option to cancel. Oh, now our trial period ended. So now we actually started a payment. So now we can walk to Nordkraft, and oh yeah, by the way, you can also see that up in the corner it says no car, so we are not in the car anymore. It automatically, when we agreed that we were in the parking lot by not canceling it, it assumed, okay, I guess you are not in the car anymore because you parked it. So we are going to Nordkraft by foot. Yes. Yeah, Taikos. Oh, yeah. There we go. It's new in the city. Okay, so now we have an active parking register at our server. The parking attendant can, when you go, sees our car, sees the number plate, and you go to an interface and check, is this car currently, does this car currently have an active payment in the process? And it does. So we will not be fined, which is good. So, yeah, okay, now the user is done at Nordkraft, so he wants to go back to his car. He has been, of course, using his device, as everybody does all the time. So, I'm going to, okay, he walks towards the parking lot, but he can't quite remember where it was, so he wants to, yes, he checks his car info, where he knows there's information of where he parked his car. We can see there's a marker. You can click on it and get route guidance to it. It's not far, so it's good because he's walking. So he gets back to the car. He remembers that he has to pay for his parking. You see the notification is persistently there. So he can click pay. And the parking has paid. So for 2 minutes, he paid 7 kroner, which is nice. Okay, as a minimum price. Okay, we also have another option of manually parking, because not all parking, not everywhere you park is a registered parking lot, so you might not be automatically starting. So if we select our car again, yes. And now we are going to a vacation, so we are going to the airport. Let's zoom a little out and go a little faster. And some of you might know that it's fall vacation in Denmark, so there's a lot of people off work, a lot of people go to vacation, so the parking lot at Aalborg Airport is very crowded at the moment. This one. Yeah. It's a very big parking lot, but on the other hand, it's free, so which is nice. So the user drives, parks somewhere where he finally finds a free spot, but we don't have automatic parking at this parking lot, so we want to manually initiate the parking by clicking on this button in the corner. Yeah, okay, we get this pop-up that says, do you want to park here? It automatically put in the address. It also saves the GPS location. You have the option to put in a timer, but we don't want to because we have been on for a week. So we don't want that. Okay, and then we'll just save it. And close it. So a week has gone, and the user is back from vacation. Now, where did he park his car? Open the app. Go to the car info, look up your car. Okay, so apparently it didn't update. But as we can see, the GPS location where he last parked his car was there. It's, I think it's a small bug with the...
We can just do it again.
Yeah, okay, we can try to park again. Okay, so now we save the location accurately.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, so the user just exits the airport, and we can see the GPS location of the car. Additionally, we can also have the possibility to add extra text. So, for instance, we could add 2F if that's the name of the area that he parked in, if he doesn't trust the accuracy of the GPS. Or if it's covered parking, the GPS might be really bad. So it might be nice to save the level and the area. Okay, so we also have the possibility to be route guided to the nearest parking. So we should select the car. Yes. And for tonight's event, we know we're going to this cozy little venue called Du's Vinkeller, Du's Wine Cellar. And we know it's placed on Østerågade. So we click to destination, and we click take me to nearest parking to this destination. We need to enter the destination. Should I do it? Okay, so we entered the destination with a lot of lovely Danish letters in it. We click search. It proposes this, but it's not quite the one. We want the one in Aalborg. There we go. Choose. And it proposes this parking lot. It's called Budolfi Plads. It's quite close to it. We know it. So we can see some general information about the parking lot. The reason why it says unavailable is because not all the fields in the service has been filled out yet. But it's just to give an idea of the possibilities of all the information we can have on the parking places. So name, opening hours, availability. Not a lot of free places at the moment, so we better hurry. We can get an itinerary, so a description of the route to get to the parking lot. But as we're driving, we don't want to sit and skim through this, so we would rather want a map, routed map description. So here we have this. So we are slowly driving. We are driving towards this parking lot. You can see the route guidance is being updated while we move. Slowly. We're moving a little faster than we're supposed to on the roads right now. For demonstration purposes, I think it's okay. It's an electric car, you don't get tickets in Denmark. Zoom again. Yeah. So we need to find our way through the curly Danish roads. No, it's a stop. No, not that one. That's the next one. Yes, so there. So we found the parking lot, and we will, in a short moment, see the parking initiated, asking, are we in this parking lot? Well, yes, we are. So we don't need to perform any other actions than remember to pay when we move our car again. Okay, now if we look at the emulator right now, we see this ring around the dot, and this is indicating the accuracy of the location we have. So currently we have an accuracy of, I think it's 30 meters or so, 21 meters. So this is actually the issue that we are trying to solve by using this thing called the map matching algorithm. So if you go to pay the parking, okay. Yeah, go back. Select the car. Yes, and then we go to
automatic.
Yeah.
Oh, I should say battery software using.
Okay. And yes, so now we are going towards a parking lot, but we are trying to show this issue with the inaccurate stuff.
This?
Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
That's French people do.
Yep. Okay. I think you forgot to pay before.
I forgot.
Yeah.
And I'm not in the car.
So now we are parked at the corner of the parking lot, but we're not sure, due to the inaccuracy of the location, whether we are in or we are actually out, because with 95% probability we could be anywhere within the circle. So we might as well be parked on the street right next to it, because we saw a free spot and we don't want to pay for parking. So in this case, we also have if the map matching fails, if it doesn't, based on the location samples we give it, if it's not able to precisely estimate our position within the parking lot, we also have the option to manually park in the parking lot. So by clicking on this parking lot, we know we're in. Yes, we again see the information, and we have the button at the bottom where we can initiate the parking manually. So it just asks to be sure, are you in this parking lot? If by accident, we can of course always cancel it. Otherwise, the parking will be initiated. So these were the main functionalities of this use case. Any questions? No? No questions in the web? All right. Well, thank you for your attention.
Frank, you're now the presenter. And we see your screen.
I know. I was trying to find the unmute button, but there it is. I can't get it to. Oh, there it is. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Frank Verhulst from CGI. I've been working on the business model of MOBiNET.
Can anybody hear me?
We can all hear you.
Okay, fine. Then I'll continue. Where to start? Yes. The business model. Of course, there are many definitions of a business model, but we took the one from quite a popular book, The Business Model Generation. It's the business model canvas, and it describes a business model as a rationale of how an organization creates, delivers, and captures the value. We took the book and the method as a basis for our MOBiNET business model. To come back to MOBiNET, the functional blocks, I guess you have seen them this morning. On the left-hand side, we have, so to speak, the users of the system. That's the end user, can be a consumer or a business user, can be cars or onboard units, etc. They all communicate using the MOBI agent towards the MOBI center. And in the MOBI center, that's the heart of MOBiNET, and that's where all the intelligent services are. Of course, those services need to be fed with data and services, app stores, payment facilities, etc. So when you look at this figure, it is seen from the functional side, and it's good to know that it works like this, but if you look at it from a business point of view, it looks a bit different, as can be seen in this figure. Oh. I have to go back. Okay, this one. This is the MOBiNET ecosystem. In the middle, we have positioned our MOBI center. This is the ICT platform and all the ICT and business services. Around that, in the green, I don't see my mouse, oh, there it is. In the green circle is the MLE. We call that the MOBiNET legal entity. And that is let's say, an organization of companies that are member of MOBiNET and that are responsible for the whole organization and the running of the organization of MOBiNET. Around that, we see content providers and technology providers. These are other businesses that have chosen not to be part of MOBiNET legal entity, but still want to be able to provide their services or offer their data, etc. It was said before this morning, MOBiNET is very broad. It can provide services to many, and here we see the division into many markets. For example, the public transport market, insurance market, the parking market, as we've just seen, the safety market, the logistics market. And for each market, you can have specific service or content providers. So we address them as well. Then in the end, we see that our users here in the transport market, that they are being serviced by specific service providers. So you have service providers that focus on the public transport market, but also that focus on the parking market. And you might have service providers that are very broad and just offer services in all markets. The core of MOBiNET is to provide services to businesses. But of course, via these businesses, we can reach consumers. As I said here, MOBiNET is a business to consumer organization. We have looked at how MOBiNET will position itself between those service providers and the end users. And we've chosen for the non-commercial model, for now that is. In this figure, you see here the MOBiNET legal entity. On the left-hand side, we have service enablers, technology suppliers, all, let's say, enablers of ITS services. They offer their data, they offer their content, they offer their technology via the MOBiNET platform to service providers. These service providers, let's say, assemble their services, also based on the service enablers and technology suppliers, and they offer their services to the end users. End users pay the service provider, and they get a service for that. And of course, from the service provider, the money flows back to MOBiNET and eventually to the service enablers and the technology suppliers. We have chosen not to be a commercial party in this, so MOBiNET will never receive money from end users. The reason why is that we don't want to compete with our service providers. We are a facilitating platform, and we are helping all companies in this ecosystem to create this value chain that you see in front of you. So end users, yes, we know them. Yes, we might provide services from a service perspective, but never from a commercial perspective. This is the business model canvas. This is then the method I started off with. And the business model canvas makes it easy, one page, to depict your organization. It consists of 9 building blocks, and once you fill out all those blocks, you know how your organization should be run. We have customer segments, customer relationships, the channels, the value proposition, the key activities, the key resources, key partners that you might need, and of course for the financials, the cost structure and the revenue streams. We've seen many applications of this canvas for many companies. It's sometimes it's a puzzle, but in the end is a very strong method to tell the story of your organization. So we applied it for MOBiNET as well. I will not discuss all building blocks, but we will discuss the most important ones. Of course, there's the customer segments. Where is it? Come on, mouse. Yeah, there's the mouse. You see that we depicted the consumer also outside of MOBiNET, because once they are being serviced by the service providers, so they are not directly paying customers of MOBiNET, but they are paying customers of our service providers. And the service providers, of course, we see them as our customers. Also, technology providers and service enablers are customers to MOBiNET, because they will pay us for the services we provide to them, or for example, for the public that we offer to them. And of course, in the end users are somewhat customers, because what I just said is that we will service them, we will not sell to them, but we will service them. So we see them as customers as well. The value proposition is what it is that you do as an organization that makes you attractive for your customers. The reason why customers come to your organization and want to buy services from you. The products match the customer segments. So this box is the value proposition that we think is interesting to service providers. This box, the blue one, is the box is a value proposition for technology providers and service enablers, and the yellow one is the value proposition for the end users. The green one for the service providers, we offer an operational pan-European platform that is trusted and standardized, and it offers an installed base of end users. It offers technology providers and service enablers that are already connected to the platform and can easily be used. We offer a MOBiNET brand that is recognized by service providers, the technology and service providers, and the end users. And we offer a service directory. So altogether, this makes it very lowers the barrier for service providers to develop new services or to find new end users. For the technology providers and service enablers, it is a little bit the same, but then the other way around. Of course, we offer them a European platform as well that is trusted and standardized, but it also enables them easily to sell their services or technology to service providers and other end users. So it creates for them an enormous opportunity to make more business and make more money. For the end users, we offer a app directory and the MOBiNET brand. The app directory will make it very easy for end users to find ITS services that they need right now. If they are in Aalborg today, they can easily find their ITS services. and when they go on holiday next week, they can find the ITS service that they need in their holiday place. We think these are the core value propositions of MOBiNET. If you look at the revenue streams, we say, okay, mainly for end users, it is free. MOBiNET is being paid by the service providers. And of course, service providers may ask a fee from the end users. They will ask a fee from the end users for the service they provide. But there will be no direct payment from end users to MOBiNET. The technology providers and service enablers, they will pay MOBiNET to be connected to the platform, and there might be, we haven't decided on that, there might be additional charges for the usage of the service or
Any other comments, questions? Anything coming in from where do I start? If you are a potential business user, you do not have to provide data. You can use it. The platform is there to identify sources of data that you may need for your own service. You do not need to provide. It's really, the platform is open in a number of ways, and that is one of them. It is absolutely intended to continue MOBiNET after the end of the project. And I think the current partners in the consortium are committed to that. We are building up a group of businesses, I hope, outside the consortium who will see the interest that this continues. If it's billing or payment, MOBiNET is not intending to be a bank. There are banks, there are payment services out there. In my view, it is a billing and accounting and a billing and clearing function that we provide. It is between different providers. So, for example, we saw a very nice parking application working just in Aalborg. Why should you not? It is the intention that if you're a driver and maybe you had to cross a toll bridge as well on the journey and before you got to the car parking bit, if your journey has multiple stages and it is provided, there's a service provided by multiple providers, it is part of the vision of MOBiNET that the user pays once. And in that case, every time the user consumes a service provided by one provider, that those charges can be accumulated and accounted for, and then a single payment made. That is not actually a payment service that we need to provide. We just need to keep track of the different chargeable events and be able to charge them to a single account of the user's choice in some way. Could car sharing be? Okay. So the first three. Okay. Okay. There's one. Matthias.
Which steps do you foresee to come to a deployment of MOBiNET? So you said there's a strong agreement between the developers that continues, that you will have all necessary stakeholders in the consortium, and how will you cover the correct legal aspects, which we already talked about, contractual aspects, and is there something like a whiteboard or the deployment of such a system?
Yeah, there will be. It's not ready yet, of course, and we're working on it right now. So you'll understand that there are two blocks of work that are related to the future deployment of MOBiNET. The first one is the area of work that we heard from Frank, which is about business models and about organization and governance. And we'll hear some more about that actually, I think, in the next, from the next speaker. And the other area is how, in fact, to sell MOBiNET to potential investors and potential business users. So those are two parts that we are working on right now. There will be far more heard about this. Much will be clear by the time, for example, we do major demonstrations at the ITS World Congress in Bordeaux, October 2015. And there are other moves afoot to build up a potential group of investors and governing entities to back up this MOBiNET legal entity that we're talking about. In some way, it needs to be an operational platform. For that, it needs a legal entity. But for that, it needs a mix of public and private investors and sponsors, I will say. Even if we're going to need the public sector to back this as well, in order that open data becomes, that they use MOBiNET as a way to publish the open data that they have. Even if they don't have a profit motive, they have a very strong political motive that this platform succeeds and is an open and public-private endeavor. So. Okay, I thought you stopped me from the questions. Pardon? Okay. So we're coming towards the end of the session then. Could actual car sharing and car bike sharing apps be integrated in MOBiNET? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you've seen through the parking, you've seen in the parking application demonstration, that is a service. And a parking application anywhere else in Aalborg would also be published in the service directory. And what we are hoping is that all of the online mobility support services that are provided around Europe are published, listed in our directory, in the one directory. So we absolutely welcome anyone in Spain, for example, that has or is a provider of these new mobility service apps. Please publish it. When we are ready to open this up with release 2, we will contact you if we know who you are. So yeah, who to contact to analyze for requirements. Send your request to us, and I will forward it to the right providers. Benefits of selecting MOBiNET to develop mobile apps into instead of doing over another firmware surfing. Okay. Well, we have the intention that MOBiNET is the one open and European platform. And again, you don't develop your mobile apps into MOBiNET. You publish them. If you have data that you want other people to be aware of and to use, if you have apps that you want users to discover in their smart device, we think MOBiNET is the right place to do that. That doesn't stop people also working in other frameworks at the moment. And this is, in fact, another point. There are many other quite similar projects, and already we've heard from about the mobility data marketplace in Germany, the National Dutch Data Warehouse. These things, we're already talking with them, with the idea of forming a network of platforms, if you like. There are many different platforms out there. Some of them are project related, and they will either be frozen or kind of die at the end of that project. Of course, we really hope the MOBiNET will not be that one. But yeah, firmware, I don't know. These are in some way linked to current projects, and we don't know what will happen to those. In any case, they are not specific to this world of mobility. And we think there's a lot of advantage in bringing together applications and data that have really only to do with transport and mobility. Of course, the edges are fuzzy, because if you're talking about electromobility, then there's already an electromobility service platform as well, which is EMI3 is one, and there's one in a research project called Green Emotion. Well, we talked to Green Emotion, and we are looking to see what is the relationship then in the future between these existing or new platforms and MOBiNET. And MOBiNET is not going to take over these other platforms, but we think that they can also be, a separate platform can be listed, published as a link to that platform can be published in our service directory. Again, we intend to be the one-stop shop. And someone else used that language, I think, Matthias, maybe it was you. Car data, absolutely. Down to the point where real-time data coming from anything, from a traffic light in the future, or from networks of detectors or loops, and anything that is real-time data coming from cars, coming from the public sector, potentially coming from the private sector, can be listed and published in our service directory. And this will be valuable to people who create new applications and services. Many of these data will be commercial or private, but we still believe that we provide the right protection through this. All we are asking people to do is publish the existence of the data and the conditions for accessing it and using it. There may need to be a contract, a commercial contract between a data provider and a potential user, business user. So car data is absolutely part of the field. Discussions on convincing car makers to provide open standardized access to car data is a really interesting one. MOBiNET is not. Michael, you're mouthing at me here. Telematic service providers are the key. They are the link between an embedded vehicle device and a service provider. And he's speaking as one. And that is a separate discussion from MOBiNET itself. But again, in principle, nothing is excluded. Come to us with your use case, and we'll see if we can support it. And if it's a good use case and we need to change something, that's why we are going through 3 releases. This is a learning project as well, and it is an adaptive project. So give us your request, feedback, tell us what you want from it, and we try and provide it. Are we planning to cooperate with other projects? I've answered that. We are already cooperating with other projects. And we are delighted to hear from other projects that we may not know of, but we are aware of quite a few already. The exact outcome from that cooperation, as I said, still needs to be discussed. Everyone who has a research project funded by the EU, they have their own contract, they have their own objectives and mission, and yeah, it's not always easy to collaborate, but again, we intend to provide this universal directory of services, data, and our tools, and anyone should find that useful for them. I'm looking around.
I would still like you to conclude, because this is kind of the launch of the provider community, and I don't want you to go through your presentation, but we need to close. How can people engage from now? Now we have presented everything we need to do that. What's the next step?
Yeah, Julie has just asked, not for a formal presentation about the provider community, but just a final word on this and the importance of the work that we do to develop this community for the growth and the success of the platform. So Jens Peter Christensen, you're working on that topic within the project. You need just to stand in front of the screen.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad to speak to you here in the room, and also to you who are still alive on the webinar. With all the questions coming in, I guess there's quite a lot of people still active there. I think it's impressive that you have been able to sit with the computer and listen for so many hours. hard work, but we are very thankful for that. Anyway, I will shorten down my presentation a little because I think the previous presentation about the business model and what Paul Konfner has sort of guided us through a discussion about business models gives a sort of good introduction for everybody. And we need, of course, to refine the business models and be able to tell you as a data provider or as a service provider more precisely how you can interact with MOBiNET. And we have really a task here to hurry up and get that done so that we are able to give you the precise framework for being active in the MOBiNET world in actually a few months, because we want the MOBiNET to be able to survive and become a sustainable business one way or another that can support your data contribution, support your service contribution, and support your business model. So we will be ready with the clear answers to the questions that you asked, and to the questions that was asked actually in the slide by Frank before, to be able to help you know how to interact with MOBiNET. I think you've seen and had a lot of presentations this morning about how MOBiNET can help you and what MOBiNET can do, and we also seen a very convincing demonstration about the parking information service that is actually running here in Aalborg based on MOBiNET. What we can offer you for now is, of course, as you were told before earlier this morning, that there's possibilities of getting a view on the desktop platform by sending mails to the contact persons. There's also a LinkedIn place where you can become a member. If you search for MOBiNET on LinkedIn, then you will find the group, become a member of that group, and we'll keep you informed. And by becoming member of that group, you also accepted that we consider you as being serious, interested in MOBiNET. So we would like you very much to become a member of MOBiNET, and we also will keep you informed about the possibilities that you have by interacting with MOBiNET. So for now, we consider the LinkedIn group MOBiNET as one of the major contact platforms between the MOBiNET project as it's running today and between you. We are scaling up and doing a lot of work on preparing for the activities with you as an external user, data provider or service provider, and we are very glad that you have attended this workshop today, that you have asked all the good questions, and you are of course very much welcome still to interact with us also through the web, through the email addresses that you have seen in the presentations, and you are very much welcome to contact the project, which you can find on the internet also, and I think you can also always write mobinet.eu, and then you will get direct link to the project. So thank you very much for participating today. Thank you very much for your contributions, and looking forward to meet you both in the real world and the virtual world.
Thank you very much, Jens Peter. I think we'd like to wrap up the session now, both the virtual and the real one. At least in the real one, people are beginning to get hungry and think of lunch. But before we close, I want to especially thank our hosts here, Aalborg University and the North Denmark region, at least. Julie, you raise your hand. While I'm waiting, I want to thank Julie especially for organizing the webinar, organizing logistics. The person who asked the question, you can ask it online. You can speak. Jerzy Zanowski. You can ask your question out loud, I believe. No? Okay. Anyway, we have recorded all the questions in the webinar. We've recorded everything, in fact, haven't we? Is there anyone else that we need to thank? I want to thank all the speakers, everyone else listening who asked questions, but I think we can finish. Thank you.